And welcome back to PlayMakers Talk Show. Our second guest is an entrepreneur. He is CEO of a company called Employee Solutions. His name is David Bristol. David is a serial entrepreneur and retired combat Air Force fighter pilot. He currently is CEO of Employee Solutions, one of the largest staffing firms in North Texas, which he started in 1997. Today, Employee Solutions has revenues in excess of $75 million, employs up to 3,000 temporary employees, and 79 full-time corporate employees with 13 offices in Texas and Oklahoma. He is also a co-founder of Sub-Assembly Group and Provider Solutions. Employee Solutions was named to the Inc. 5000 fastest-growing list and the Dallas 100 for 2 consecutive years in 2012 and 2013. David, welcome to PlayMakers Talk Show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I mentioned before that you were a combat fighter pilot with the Air Force. So how'd you go from being a combat fighter pilot to starting a staffing company?
Well, it was a interesting move. It was I had been living in Europe with my family for 6 years, and somewhere along the way, I had been away from home for 185 days, going out doing all the different missions that the Air Force had for us to do. And I decided with 2 young kids, I needed to have a little bit more stable home life. And so we decided to come back from Europe, and we lived in Wichita Falls. Along the way, my father-in-law and mother-in-law had a temporary staffing franchise, and I said, okay, that sounds like something I can do. So they taught me a little bit of the business, and we opened in 1997.
Going back to what you're talking about, were you originally going to be a career pilot?
Absolutely. I was a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and I was on the track to just continue on through. I wanted to be a 4-star general, but I wanted to be able to fly all the time. And that doesn't necessarily work out the way it's supposed to. So flying all the time was my passion. Being a general was a path that I'd like to go on, but I would rather fly.
I can see how once you move up within the ranks, the flying time would get slimmer and slimmer along the way. Now, your in-laws had the franchise firm for staffing. How did you get excited about that? I know they had it, but where did the excitement come from for you?
Well, it was really a culmination of several years of research. My brother-in-law and I actually started the company originally, and we looked at a franchise model. We thought, why shouldn't we do the model that my in-laws had already started? As we researched it, we discovered that we had almost the same amount of talent that we thought the people we would want to be the franchisee of had. And as the story continues, we have developed all those same sets of skills that the franchisors would have done for us. We have our own legal department, our own safety department, HR department, as well as the normal everyday staffing placement work that we do that you'd get from a franchisee. We do all our own advertising and our own marketing.
Well, you have been in the military and you've also been in politics, more or less. Tell us about the time you spent, I don't know if it's politics per se, because I don't guess there's Republican, Democrat parties, but as the mayor pro tem of Prosper, Texas.
I was lucky enough to get elected to the Prosper Town Council. So Prosper, far north Dallas, where the Dallas Tollway ends, that's where our community begins. When we first moved to that town, it had 3,500 people, and now it's one of the fastest-growing cities in all of Texas and I think in the United States. So during that period of time, there was an opening for the town council, and I got elected by the people of Prosper and spent some time learning about how development occurs in North Texas, and spent some time learning about how you try and satisfy the needs of all your citizens. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Some folks talk about preserving the majority, keeping what the majority of the people like. Well, that's still 49% of the people aren't happy with what you do. So the way I tell people now is I'm a retired politician. So much as I'm a retired military officer, I'm a retired politician.
I have spoken to a number of mayors, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs and business people going into, I guess, politics by running a city, and they're running it like a business now, which means the cities are run a lot better. I assume that's what happened with you too. Very
much so. We, as a small town at that time, we didn't have some of the best business practices in place, and that's not because of an issue. It's more of just it hasn't been exposed those type of things. There's professional town manager in place now. Our current mayor is very capable and many years of experience. So putting good business practices in place, such as in finance and insurance programs, all the different things make a big difference. And there's a lot of carryover from the collaborative effort of a group of citizens trying to run the town into business. And then there's also a corresponding amount that you can bring as a business person to that governmental agency. One of which the things that we found is it takes a lot of work to get everybody on the same page. Difference in business is sometimes you don't have to do that, but you certainly have a better product at the end of the day when you get everybody's input and you move forward as a team.
Well, let's go back to your time in the Air Force and your company, which is Employee Solutions. And by the way, it's EmployeeSolutions.com. How did your training in the Air Force prepare you to become an entrepreneur?
Well, it's a process of being a fighter pilot, took training and preparation. Those same characteristics are all part of what we do today at Employee Solutions. We've actually set up our own Employee Solutions Academy where we train our new hires. We actually then continue with recurring training on a monthly basis to keep them up to date with the latest in HR features and the new laws. So as a fighter pilot, it was training and preparation. We spent every day trying to figure out our flight paths, training for the different type of weapon systems we'd employ. And then the other thing is I learned flexibility because we had all these wonderful plans and it was supposed to happen exactly the way we planned. Inevitably, something would go wrong or go different than we planned. So that's the other thing I've carried over from my military flying career is the flexibility in the competitive marketplace. We don't get to execute the exact plan we wanted to, and very often it's not any part of our plan is where we end up, but we're flexible and we adapt to the environment as it changes.
Well, you are a veteran, you're in the Air Force, and you work with veterans who are looking for jobs. One of the promotional spots we had in between the two segments was for a job fair that's coming up with Dallas Baptist University. Talk about the skills veterans bring to the civilian workforce and how you work with them at Employee Solutions.
Obviously, as a veteran, I'm very committed to the needs of veterans coming out of our current armed forces. The key with veterans is they're a proven commodity, and the specific skill set's not the important thing. It's the ability that you know they can be counted on to show up for work on time, that they'll bring a good attitude with them to work, and that they will execute according to the plan that you've laid out for them. Veterans have all of those characteristics by virtue of their time in the military. And what we do at Employee Solutions is we search for those folks because the employers today need those kind of people. They're looking for folks who, not necessarily a specific skill set, but someone who can then also be trained and learn the process that this whatever company is, and more importantly, is leadership. There are veterans out there all over North Texas who've been placed in positions of leadership at a very young age, whether it be leading a platoon or a squadron of fighters. And they're asked to do things that translate very well to the civilian world in terms of leading a team of a production group or a manufacturing side. And they're also then very capable of handling the paperwork and the compliance that goes along with it.
Well, many of these veterans don't have the skill set necessarily that the job is offering, but I would think they know how to learn, they know how to take orders, and more importantly than having a skill set is the right kind of attitude. I think with the right attitude, they can learn how to do almost any job, and you're helping put them in the right position.
Absolutely. Veterans have a lot of capabilities. You just got to get them trained for the specific position.
That's right. So how did you become a fast-growing company when the company is 17 years old?
That's an interesting story, isn't it? We started actually we were on the fastest-growing lists for the staffing industry in 2005, 6, and 7, which made sense because our revenue was not anywhere near what it is today. So it's easier to hit those incremental growth targets. So today our growth is based on our clients, the clients who've asked us to join them at a variety of different locations. So we started in North Texas. As we've grown, the incremental growth is with clients who said, hey, can you come down to Houston and do this work for us? We've started a facility in Houston with 2 offices now based on a client here in the Dallas area. The same thing in Tulsa. A client that we had here said, "Hey, can you put people to work in Tulsa?" We said, "Of course." When do you want us there, and how much do we have to invest to get into the facility? The clients that we have, we're also very, very lucky in basing our business here in North Texas. The North Texas economic climate is great. There's no better place to do business than in North Texas, in particular in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We were lucky enough 17 years ago to plan ahead a little bit for that. We thought it would be a good place to do business, and we were right. As we continue, I think the economic policies for the area are going to continue this growth. Everywhere you look, you see cities in North Texas on the fastest growing lists of cities.
Well, it looks like with the 14 offices you have, and you have a lot here in the Metroplex, it's almost like spokes of the wheel from DFW being the hub out to Houston and Tulsa, so you can move in almost any direction, so you have potential to grow even further.
That's right. We're looking to continue actually an acquisition perhaps in Oklahoma. Houston, we have 2 offices, but the size of Houston is the largest city in Texas. We only have 2 offices. Our competitors have 6 and 7 offices there, so we're looking to continue to grow in Houston. We have 2 offices in Austin, one in North and one in South Austin. So Houston, Tulsa are major growth areas, and as we go further from our base in Dallas, further to the west over into the Fort Worth area, we'll continue to grow over there.
A lot of potential. In the last 30 seconds or so, we have a lot of business people, entrepreneurs that are listening. So what advice could you give those people, entrepreneurs, business owners, that can help them achieve success as you have?
My number one key would be conservative financial management. And that sounds like something everybody makes sense of to start with, but it really means don't overextend yourself with the commitments that whether they be advertising, marketing, or staff. And what happens, we've been very conservative. The other is that make sure you understand the numbers. There's a lot of different ways to run businesses. The key for me is I have tried very hard to understand the numbers behind the way we finance a company. It's the lifeblood of all businesses is a cash flow.
There he is, the secrets of success. David, thank you very much for being a guest on PlayMakers Talk Show.
Thank you.
David Bristol, CEO of Employee Solutions, and you can check their website out at employeesolutions.com. Thank you to our guests for being here. Great show. Join us at PlayMakersTalkShow.com, where you can get all the replays and past episodes. That's PlayMakersTalkShow.com. I'm Steve Klein. We're going to be back next week with more Playmakers. We will see you then.
Who will Steve be interviewing next? Find out on PlayMakers Talk Show with Steve Klein every Friday afternoon at 3 on 770 KAAM. Hear this interview again by going to Steve's website, PlayMakersTalkShow.com.